and welcome to Stories by Grandma. When looking for ideas for our stories, we appreciate the help we get from other people. I would like to tell you about one such person and his contribution to us. His name is Ezra Davis, and he is my father-in-law. Over the last 20 years of his life, he made repeated trips to his childhood home. With the help from his extended family, he brought back many boxes full of pictures and negatives, some dating back to the 19th century. Those boxes also held birth, death, and marriage certificates. There were postcards and telegrams from around the world, and his mother's scrapbooks. We looked through high school yearbooks that were 85 years old. We found Ezra's military history in documents he had saved for decades. We found souvenirs from when he dated Rosella, Ted's mother, and we found pictures and military documents of Ezra playing baseball all over the United States, the Philippines, Japan, and England. Speaking of England, we saw pictures, movies, and souvenirs from the coronation of Queen Elizabeth. The list kept going on and on and on. We wound up with a collection so big that it took Ted years to organize and digitize it. In April of 1991, Ezra turned 75 years old. The following month, he drove about 800 miles from his home in California to our home in Utah to attend the high school graduation of our daughter Julie, his first granddaughter and first grandchild. While he was visiting, our son Eric interviewed him for a school project about family history. He always was a good storyteller, and he was eager to talk about his life. We showed him a questionnaire that came from a Write Your History type book, and he took it home. He called later to tell us that he was going to tape record what he wanted to say instead of typing it out. Over the next several months, he wore out a pair of tape recorders working on his stories. By Thanksgiving, he sent a box of cassette tapes, about 15 hours of stories, and by February of 1992, he sent another box with about 10 more hours. During those months, he spent a lot of time visiting his second wife, Mamie, who was in a nursing home. He would go visit her in the morning and come home and work on his stories, then often go back in the afternoon. We don't know if he had any sense of what was coming, but when we talked to one of Mamie's daughters later, she said that when he was working on his stories, he seemed like a man possessed. Those were her words. A few days after we received the second box of tapes, he phoned and told us he had had a stroke. At the time, we thought it must have been really mild because the only effect we noticed was slightly slurred speech. Towards summer, he called again saying he had had another stroke. He told us how he was upset with the doctors because he was being treated for a stroke, and then he has another one. The doctor did some tests and determined that he actually had developed a brain tumor. Further exams found a second tumor. The growth of the tumors were extremely fast, and pressure they put on his brain caused his symptoms. Because he was retired military, he had access to military hospitals. The nearest one was the Oak Knoll Naval Hospital in Oakland. It was about 75 miles from where he lived, and he went there to have the tumors removed. The doctors told us that there was nothing they could do. The tumors had grown so big and so fast. They were in the right temporal lobe of his brain, and when the doctors removed them, the resulting damage caused him to become paralyzed on the left side. Two weeks after surgery, at 7:05 p.m. on August 2nd, 1992, he died in his sleep in the hospital. Many people die and leave nothing behind. My father-in-law gave us a richly detailed legacy. We not only have thousands of pictures and documents, we have his spoken words recorded by him. He had a photographic memory, and that helped him be a good storyteller. Ted thought he had heard all of his father's story by then, but as we went through the tapes, we heard things he had never heard before, including the story of how his parents met. As Ezra started his historical timeline, his mind was as clear and sharp as it had ever been. However, as he moved closer to the present, the growth of the tumor started causing problems with his ability to speak, and his memory began to fail. He began to confuse details, and he completely skipped several years of the 1960s. From the time he came to see Julie graduate until the time he died was only about 15 months. Thanks for watching. Please hit the subscribe button and the thumbs up, and you are welcome to leave your comments, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye.